You've been told this is just what Christian marriage looks like: long suffering, self sacrificing, silent, that love means enduring mistreatment with a smile. But what if the pain you've carried for decades is not a badge of godliness, but a sign that you've been emotionally abused? In this episode, we're pulling back the curtain on 5 key differences between a normal Christian marriage and the destructive patterns that churches too often excuse. Welcome to episode 358 of the Flying Free podcast. But this is also part 3 of my series called Emotional Abuse 101, Everything You Need to Know. Today, we're going to be talking about how to tell the difference between a normal Christian marriage and emotional abuse. You can listen to part 1, which is 10 of the most subtle signs of emotional abuse in a Christian marriage, by going to flyingfreenow.com/356. Or it's right here on YouTube as well. And you can listen to part 2, which is the art of saying no, setting boundaries when you've been trained to say yes. And that is flyingfreenow.com/357. Or again, you can watch on here on YouTube if you want to. But today we're going to talk about something that I get asked about a lot. And honestly, I think it's one of the most important topics that we could discuss. This question comes to me in lots of different ways. Natalie, how do I know that what I'm experiencing is just normal marriage problems, or if it's actually emotional abuse, like you're saying? And I get it. I really do. When you've been living in the middle of confusion, and that is one of the key words here, confusion, it can feel impossible to tell the difference between what's normal and what's not, especially if you maybe grew up in a dysfunctional home and thought that was normal, and then you've been marinating in a dysfunctional relationship for many years. It's maybe all you've ever known. So how would you know if it's normal or not? So here's what I want you to know right from the get-go. A normal Christian marriage is not confusing. I'm going to say it again. A normal Christian marriage is not confusing. I have lots of Christian friends who are married who have normal marriages. And if I said to them, is your marriage confusing? They would be confused by that. That concept does not, that does not compute with them. Okay. So if you're constantly asking yourself, is it me? Am I the problem? Why am I so confused? I don't understand. Well, you should probably get my book, Is It Me? Making Sense of Your Confusing Marriage. But also just know those are red flags if you're asking those questions. And maybe that's why you're here today. I'm going to walk you through 5 key differences between normal marriage problems and an emotionally abusive marriage. And these are distinctions that literally changed my life when I finally understood them. And I think they can change yours too. Before we dive in, though, I do want to acknowledge something. If you're listening to this because you're questioning your relationship, you could be feeling scared right now. Maybe your heart is even pounding a little bit. Maybe you're worried about what you might learn about your marriage today. I remember the first time I started reading about emotional abuse. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I felt dizzy. I felt sick to my stomach. My body hurt all over. And if that's how you're feeling right now, I want you to know that you're brave to be here and to be listening to this. You're brave for being willing to ask these questions. And also, whatever you discover today, I promise you're not the only one. Okay, so here's the first difference. It's what I just mentioned. It's the presence or absence of confusion. I think that in a normal marriage, you might have both people that disagree. Of course, we're going to have differences of opinion. We're going to have conflicts. They could even be heated arguments sometimes. But here's the thing. You're not confused about what just happened. In a healthy marriage, if you and your husband were having a disagreement, you or he might be annoyed, you might be frustrated, you might even get your feelings hurt. But you're not going to sit there afterwards going, wait a minute, what just happened? Did I imagine that? Am I crazy? Did I completely misunderstand everything? You should be able to say, hey, could you clean up after yourself when you make coffee in the morning? Just clean up the coffee grounds. And you should get a sure, be happy to. And then from then on, barring no unforeseen circumstances, like maybe once in a while he might be on a rush out the door, right? Whatever. But for the most part, from then on, he would do that. Why would he do that? Because he's a grown-up man. He's a contributing partner in the relationship. You're not going to hear from a grown man, Excuses, blame shifting, the silent treatment. You're not going to feel this or sense the seething resentment for asking him. And it's sad that you have to ask him in the first place to pull his weight in the relationship. All right. If he's a man, he's going to go, oh, he's going to probably recognize she really probably shouldn't have to ask me that. I should probably clean up after myself. I'm not 5 years old, right? I mean, even my 5-year-old will clean up after himself. I don't have a 5-year-old anymore, but when my kids were 5, they could clean up after themselves. So your man can do that too. He can do hard things. Compare that to emotional abuse, where confusion is the key to control. If someone can keep you perpetually off kilter and confused, they can control you. In an emotionally abusive relationship, you experience what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, where there are two opposite realities side by side. Your partner is sometimes wonderful and sometimes not so much. And your brain can't figure out which is it. One minute he's bringing you home flowers after work and telling you that you're the love of his life. And the next minute he's criticizing you or making you question your own reality or giving you the silent treatment because you asked him to clean up the coffee grounds after himself. That creates confusion, and that confusion is intentional. Sometimes I'll give people this example. Think about your best friend, the friend that you feel really, really safe with, the one that is always going to be there for you, always gets you. Do you ever feel confused in that relationship? I mean, if you do, it's probably an abusive friendship. But for the most part, our best friends, we trust them, they trust us, and it's a great relationship. I'm talking about a healthy friendship here, okay? There is no confusion. There's no pain. Maybe you get annoyed with each other once in a while. Maybe they're the kind of person who's always late to everything or whatever, but there's not all of this emotional pain. You don't feel like you can never be good enough for them. You don't feel like you're walking on eggshells around them all the time. So here's your first checkpoint. If your marriage feels confusing most of the time, if you are constantly questioning your own reality, if you are saying things like I was saying, I feel like I am in the twilight zone. If you're saying that a lot, that's not normal, my friend. That is an emotionally abusive relationship. All right, here's the second difference. And it has to do with how conflicts get handled in your relationship. In a normal marriage, when problems come up, and they come up because, like we just talked about, we're all human, there is a path to resolution. Both people can express their feelings, and both people are good listeners. And then they work together, because they're both adults, to solve the problem. Let me tell you what that looks like practically. In a healthy relationship, if you're upset about something that your husband did, you can say, hey, when you did this, it really hurt my feelings. And you know what happens? He doesn't get defensive. He doesn't attack you. He doesn't tell you you're so sensitive. You're making so many assumptions. You're just making a mountain out of a molehill. No, he listens. He might ask you some questions to understand better. He might apologize if it hurt, and then you work it out together. But in an emotionally abusive relationship, this process is completely broken. If you try to bring up a problem, do you know what happens then? I'm going to read to you a list from my book. Is It Me? Making Sense of Your Confusing Marriage. This is what emotionally abusive partners typically do when you bring up a problem. They'll discount your credibility. They'll scoff at your concerns. They'll judge and criticize you. They'll threaten you. They'll call you names. They might yell at you. They might intimidate you. They'll minimize the impact of their behavior. They'll tell you that you're making a mountain out of a molehill. They'll deny their behavior. They'll justify their behavior. Does any of this sound familiar? Here's the key difference. In a normal marriage, conflicts lead to deeper understanding and intimacy. After 3 decades of that kind of marriage, you've got a deeper intimacy in your relationship. If you've been married for 3 decades and you feel like you're worlds apart, that's not normal. In an abusive marriage, conflicts lead to you being punished because you have needs or feelings or thoughts. And here's something really important about emotional abuse. It's secret, it's regular and repeated. That means it's chronic, and it's never resolved. Things always get shoved under the rug. If you want peace, you have to put it under the rug and not bring it up again. An emotionally abusive person is not remorseful or sad for the damage they've caused. Oh, yes, they can be sad and remorseful for how you took away their plaything. You're not doing what they wanted you to do. You expressed a thought that was not in their brain. We mustn't do that. They're like small children that way. So they'll be remorseful and sad for themselves. They'll be the victim. They don't care they don't care about your feelings. Why? Because you're just a toy to them. You're a thing that they use. They've been taught from the pulpit that that's what you are. You are their thing. You're their person that is supposed to be there for them and build them up and be their slave and their lackey, and they're the king and you're the servant. You're the sex slave. You're the housekeeper. You're the bearer of their children. You are these things, and you're not supposed to have you're not supposed to have express your feelings or even have them. I was recently reading about the things that men used to say about women, even just, 150 years ago. One of the things was that they have small brains, so they can't come up with, so we as men need to lead them because they have smaller brains than we do. Okay. That is this is what we have been marinating in all of history. You'd think that by the 21st century, we would have evolved past this, but no, we still are. All right. So they're going to deny and minimize and justify their behavior or blame you for it. And this cycle is going to repeat itself over and over and over again. So checkpoint number 2 is, if bringing up problems in your marriage constantly leads you to being attacked, where now you are the perpetrator, or being dismissed or blamed, and if problems never actually get resolved, that is not a normal marriage conflict. That is an abusive marriage. All right, difference number 3. This is about respect, and this is so important. In a normal marriage, both partners are adults who treat each other with basic human dignity and respect, even when they're upset with each other. So what does respect look like? Respect is being courteous, actively engaging with your partner's hopes and dreams, listening well, caring about their feedback, paying attention, compromising, asking their opinion, accepting their differences, and asking instead of demanding. Basically, it's just treating another person like they are special and worthy of your regard because they are, right? You can't demand respect, by the way. It has to be freely given for it to be real, because respect it's born out of love, and love is given. It's not stolen or taken from someone. So what does disrespect look like? To disrespect someone is to ignore their voice, to blame and shame them, to take power over them and to control them, to treat them rudely, to look down on them, to avoid them, to give them the silent treatment when they don't do what you want them to do, to call them names or demand obedience, to threaten them, and to refuse to tolerate the differences between you. Here's something that I want to clear up that's taught in a lot of Christian circles. You've probably heard that men need respect and women need love, but that's not what the Bible teaches. Romans 12:10 says, honor one another above yourselves. That verse is not that Paul's not talking to just one gender. He's talking to all Christians are to honor one another above themselves. And 1 Peter 3:7 specifically tells husbands to do it. It says, husbands, give honor to your wives. So this is not just that book that someone wrote about men need respect and women need love. No, humans need both love and respect. And in a healthy adult marriage, and certainly a Christian one that's Christ-like, you'll have two adults both respecting one another and loving one another. All right. So, in my former marriage, I was told constantly that I was disrespectful. But you know what I was doing that invited this criticism of my disrespect? It was always when I had a thought that was different than what was in the mind of my husband. So I might be expressing that thought in my small brain. I might be asking questions about something. Is this really what we want to do? Have you considered this idea? I was pointing out when something didn't make sense. And apparently having a brain, even a small one, and using it was considered disrespectful. I was disrespectful for sharing what was in my small brain. I'm saying that very facetiously, just by the way. So here's the thing. In a normal marriage, having different opinions is totally fine. Of course, you would express your opinion. Your husband has an opinion, and you have your opinion, and that's okay. You can discuss it. You can even disagree. But in an abusive marriage, disagreeing with the grand poobah or having your own thoughts is seen as disrespectful or threatening or wrong. And that right there is disrespectful, threatening, and wrong. Okay. Checkpoint number 3. If you're being told that you're disrespectful for having thoughts, feelings, or opinions, and if your partner consistently treats you without basic courtesy and dignity, that is not a normal marriage, my friend. That is not a Christian marriage either. So if, all these people who want to keep all the Christian marriages together, no, they don't. There's a lot of churches out there that want to keep really very secular marriages together because this is not a Christian marriage. This is an abusive marriage. This is some people would say it's a satanic marriage. All right. And definitely abusive. All right. Difference number 4, safety versus walking on eggshells. In a normal marriage, you feel safe. You feel safe physically, of course, but you also feel safe emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. You feel safe to be yourself, whatever part of the journey that you're on. And when I talk about safety, again, I'm not just talking about physical safety. I'm talking about emotional safety. In a safe relationship, you can express your feelings without being afraid that they're going to retaliate. You can make mistakes without being torn apart. You can have bad days. You can have PMS. Or just have had a baby and be completely crazy with sleep deprivation. And you might snap at your husband when you're in that mode because maybe you come out of your bedroom and the whole house is a pigsty, which is also very immature on the part of your husband if he is not helping you out when you just had a baby. And I've heard horror stories from women who, after they give birth, they are expected to still have sex. They're expected to still clean their house. They're expected to still do everything while the husband sits on the couch and watches the football game. Absolutely reprehensible. I don't know what's happening or why churches think that we should be training grown men to be small children. But that is what's happening. I've heard so many stories. So in a healthy marriage, you should not have to worry about your husband's reaction, what you're going to get from him. You don't have to carefully calculate how to approach him or I wonder what mood he's in before I speak. I remember hearing teachings like that too, where we were told as women, we should really be molding ourselves to however our husband is. So we should know, like, if he's usually in a really bad mood when he comes from work, then we need to accommodate that. And we need to be whoever he needs us to be when he's in this terrible mood. And I just don't think that's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible doesn't teach men to be like that. And it doesn't teach women that we have to fall into that role either. So, you should not have to hide who you are or parts of yourself. You should not have to pretend to be someone that you're not. There is just natural dignity in a healthy relationship. But in an emotionally abusive relationship, you do walk on eggshells. You are always having to read your partner's mood. It's like, how can we teach women to be good victims of emotional abuse, emotional and spiritual abuse? And how can we teach men to be really strategically very good at emotional and spiritual abuse? And there's a lot of marriage books that actually teach those two things. So, when you feel those dark clouds coming in, you feel the atmosphere changing and your partner's in one of their dark moods and you're like holding your breath, waiting for the shoe to drop. That is not normal. All right. That's not a normal relationship. In a safe relationship, both partners can be vulnerable with each other. They can share their fears, their dreams, their struggles, knowing that the other person is going to be able to handle their heart carefully. But in an abusive relationship, that vulnerability is exploited. Your partner takes any intimate things that you may have shared and uses them as weapons against you later. I remember in my former marriage, I was really insecure about what the women at the church were thinking about me. I was like bending over backwards, trying to do all the things and get acceptance and validation. And I was nervous about what they thought about me and my parenting. And I remember sharing this vulnerably with my husband. And, at the time he seemed like he understood and could even relate to those insecurities. I think he could relate to those insecurities. But the next opportunity when he was angry with me for something, or he wanted to turn the focus off of himself and something naughty that he had done, he turned to me and he said, the women at church they think that you have so many problems, that you have major issues. And that just took my breath away. It was like, he knew that was something I was afraid of. Like, what if these women think I'm a terrible wife or a terrible mother? And he said that to me to just shred me. And I found out, I did ask a few of the women. I said, is this something like, do you guys think this? And you just have never told me. I haven't, like, be honest with me. And they were all just like, no, we've never said anything like that. That's ridiculous. And they were surprised. They would hear me say little things like this that I was insecure about as well. And I'm sure they were also probably confused. Like, why is she, maybe some of them could relate actually, but he just said that to me, not because it was true, but because he knew that was a vulnerability and something that I had and was insecure about. So checkpoint number 4 is that if you are walking on eggshells in your marriage and you're afraid of your partner's reactions, if you can't be yourself without being afraid of being punished or accused of something or being told that you're the problem, that is not normal. You should feel safe in your marriage. Otherwise, it is emotionally and or spiritually abusive. All right, the last difference is taking responsibility versus blame shifting. When in a normal marriage, both parents are going to partners are going to take ownership of their own behavior. They're going to own their own mistakes. They're going to be okay with, yes, I'm a human. I fail sometimes. It's my responsibility. I own that. They'll apologize and do repair work when they've hurt each other. They work to do better. They want to know, like, help me. Let's mold ourselves to one another. It's not just the wife molding herself to the husband. It's both partners molding to one another. This is what mutual responsibility looks like. It's I take ownership for me and my thoughts and my emotions and my behaviors. And he takes responsibility for him and his thoughts and his emotions and his behaviors. This is basic boundaries, right? I'm not responsible for any of those things. I'm not responsible for his relationships with other people. I'm not responsible for his schedule. I'm not responsible we're both adults. So we're going to act like adults. Here's a practical example. Let's say that your husband is going to be late for dinner. In a healthy relationship, he would call his wife to let her know. And if he forgets because it really was a crazy day and he was in meetings and he couldn't get out to call, then he would call as soon as he remembers and he would take responsibility. That means that if his dinner's cold because his wife and his children had to eat without him, he's okay with that. You know why? Because he's a godly Christian man. He's a Christ follower. Can you imagine Jesus going, well, my meal better be hot because and you guys can just eat. You guys can have to wait for me and my meal better be hot. Can you imagine? Jesus was not like that. I don't remember reading anything like that about Jesus. And yet we think that's okay for these men to be like that. We think it's normal. We probably know that it's not. Something is not right with this guy. But we've been told, oh, you're supposed to mold to him. If he's going to be late, then I was literally taught this. If your husband's going to be late for work, you wait. You make sure that food stays hot. You and your kids wait for him to get home. And then you all sit down together so he can eat with the family, because this is about him, right? And so that he can have a hot meal. It doesn't matter if you and your kids are hungry. It doesn't matter if you and your kids would prefer to eat the hot meal when it came out instead of waiting for an hour or 2 hours till it's kind of icky. You know how meals get icky if they've been sitting out for a long time? That doesn't matter because it's all about him. But see, a godly husband, a Christian husband would never do that to his wife and children. And that's what I wish our churches would raise up godly Christian men to do this, right? But they are not. They're not. Many of them are not doing this. And so anyway, that's what you'd see in a normal Christian marriage. But in an emotionally abusive one, responsibility is a one-way street. Everything is the responsibility of the wife. Everything is her fault. If he's late and the dinner's cold, her fault. She should have known better. She should have done better. If he forgets something important, she should have reminded him. Why didn't she think of that? Why isn't she taking care of his schedule? Maybe he was supposed to be at church to do something because he volunteered, but then he forgot about it. She should be telling him. No, because otherwise he'll have a bad reputation at church. So we got it. These are all things that I dealt with. Okay. When he's angry, it's because you did something wrong. You either did something wrong or you didn't do something that you were supposed to do. Right. So keep it together. Keep it together, woman who's got 9 kids and homeschooling and running a business. Keep it together. this is what so many women are dealing with. In my marriage, someone, I think it was a counselor or a spiritual leader. I can't remember now, but I just remember they told me that I was responsible for 75% of my own pain. I was responsible for it. The same person told me I had betrayed myself, betrayed my husband, and betrayed God. I was constantly being told that if I would just change, if I would just be more submissive, more understanding, more patient with my poor little husband who couldn't seem to do anything other than be on the computer, well, then everything would be fine. But you know what? The last I checked in the Bible, the marriage isn't a mommy-son relationship. Ew. It's not a slave-owner relationship. It's a partnership between 2 adults. The key word here really throughout this whole thing is adult. Okay. It's a partnership between 2 adults who both take adult responsibility for their own adult choices and adult behavior. When someone is emotionally abusive, that's like a toddler. It's because someone in the relationship is a little boy. Okay. They engage in what I call the blame shifting dance. They deny, minimize, justify, excuse, cover up, and accuse because they are so insecure inside. They are so small inside that they cannot take personal responsibility. That's something that only a man can do, and they can't do that. So they have to make someone else responsible. So guess who that falls on? If you're married to them, it falls on you. So you're responsible then for their feelings, their reactions, their choices. And when you take responsibility for someone else's everything, I hate to say this, but we're actually enabling them to continue that behavior. All right. So final checkpoint. If your partner is consistently blaming you for their emotions and behaviors and choices, and they don't take responsibility for their stuff, that is not normal. That's not normal for them to do that. Okay. They need serious therapy. And also, because of that, there's someone in the relationship not doing that. The relationship then, therefore, is also not normal. It's abusive. All right. So 5 differences just to wrap up. Confusion versus clarity. Normal marriages are not confusing. Number 2, resolution versus repetition. Normal conflicts get resolved. They don't get repeated endlessly. Number 3, mutual respect versus disrespect. Both partners treat each other with dignity. Number 4, safety versus fear. You should feel safe to be yourself. And number 5, mutual responsibility versus blame shifting. Both partners own their own behavior. Now, if you're listening to this and recognizing your marriage is abusive, I want you to take a deep breath, because that probably feels overwhelming, especially if this is the first time you've ever heard these things. You could be feeling scared or sad or even angry. You might be feeling all of those feelings at once because we have different parts inside of us who feel different things. I talk about that in my book, All the Scary Little Gods. I want you to know that what's happening to you is not your fault. It's emotional abuse. Okay. That's the secret, regular and repeated cruel mistreatment of your inner emotions and heart. It's not just a difficult marriage. It's not just a challenging season. This is abuse, and it's not your fault. If you are in a marriage like this, I want you to know that you do have options. You don't have to stay stuck. Whether you decide to stay in your marriage or leave, and by the way, this is not meant to be, I don't tell people what they should do, okay? And this is not meant to be the episode where I say, you should get out of your marriage relationship. No, it took me several years to get out. But I do want you to know that what I learned during those several years that brought me from the version of myself that would never, ever in a million years have gotten out to a version of myself where you couldn't have made me stay. I mean, you'd have to torture me to make me stay. And even then I probably wouldn't stay. that process, that is what you can go through as well. You can walk through that process as well. If you want to read about that process, I wrote about it in a story form in my book, All the Scary Little Gods, which I am giving. Well, you can get it on Amazon. But I'm also, if you hop on my mailing list, you can also listen to it for free on a podcast style format. But you have to get on my mailing list. If you go to flyingfreenow.com, right at the top of the page, you can get on my mailing list. I will send you the first chapter of my book, Is It Me? I'll also send you the first chapter of the workbook that goes along with that book. And then eventually, I'll send you a few more goodies. And one of those goodies is going to be the ability to listen to that audiobook if you want to, All the Scary Little Gods. So if you need more support in those ways, that's how I can help you. I also want you to know that I have a community, an education and support community, where I actually walk Christian women, and I've been doing this for almost 10 years. I walk Christian women through the same process that I went through. I went through it alone, and it took several years. But then I carefully examined what I did and all the shifts that had to take place, and I wrote curriculum to walk women through that whole process so that they can do it in a year. And they can go from being this version of themselves. I think of it like the caterpillar version. You're still the same person, right? But there's a caterpillar version of us, and then there's the butterfly version of us. Same person, but different versions of who we are. You need to be a butterfly in order to fly free, whether that means flying out of the relationship like I did, or like some people I know who are staying in the relationship, but they have been freed now psychologically, spiritually. They are now spiritually free from the bondage that they are in this abusive relationship. And they're psychologically, emotionally, mentally free from that same bondage. So, and then whether or not you decide to actually leave the relationship, that's something that you get to decide. We don't encourage people to do one thing or the other, but we do encourage people to grow up into their adulthood. I will help you to become an autonomous adult woman that God created you to be, that God actually made you responsible for. It's your mission in life to do that, to grow up into the stature of Christ. This is a mature adult, and I will help you do that. And then from that place of mature adulthood, you can look around at you can assess your situation and decide whether or not, what's right for you, whether or not you want to stay, leave, maybe the timing of all of that, that's up to you. And I just cheer everyone on wherever they're at. I don't have a bias towards one thing or another. And some people are like, I've had emails where people say, you should be telling more people to get divorced. And then other people will say, you should be telling people to stay. You shouldn't be telling people to get divorced. So that's what happens when you tell people to just, you get to make your own choice. You're an adult woman. I'll empower you to be an adult, and then I will cheer you on, because I believe that's what God does for us. I don't think God is a control freak. He's not like our abusive husbands or exes. God's not this controlling abuser in the sky. God has given us gifts. He's given us a life that we have to steward. And then he gives us the tools and the strategies that we need to do that. And then we get to decide what we do with that. There's many parables that Jesus told that illustrate this concept. And I'll teach you those things inside of Flying Free. If you want to join us, go to joinflyingfree.com. There is an application process, but we would love to have you in there. So that's it. Until next time, I hope that you fly free.